Securing your agency's data is paramount. IBM API Connect, integrated with no-name security, offers a tailored solution for federal agencies. Protecting sensitive data isn't just about safeguarding. It's about ensuring availability, recovery, and reliability to support mission-critical operations. As an IBM Platinum partner, 4Inc trusts IBM API Connect, integrated with no-name security, for unmatched speed and efficiency in securing, accessing, and ensuring the integrity of vital data. Visit FOURINC.com.
Hey, small businesses, Centera Health Plans has a team dedicated to answering your questions, leaving time for other business thoughts like,
how did an action figure get stuck in the air vents?
Or,
what is the ideal human-to-goat ratio for my yoga class?
Knowing your health plan questions are answered, you can now focus on your other business needs. Centera Health Plans, a dedicated team for your small business. Centera Health Plans is a trade name of Centera Health Plans, Centera Health Insurance Company, Centera Behavioral Health Services Incorporated, and Centera Health Administration Incorporated. Exclusion terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. New research has found that online credit recovery courses do not challenge students, frequently repeat test questions, allow students to cheat using search engines, and lack policies governing their implementation. Joining me to discuss this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, tell us about this study from researchers at Vanderbilt and Georgia State University. What did they look at and what did they find?
Yeah, so this was it's a research paper I've been looking for actually for a while. I knew that they were working on it. I've talked to Caroline Heinrich, who's one of the main authors of this, and I've followed some of her work, and I was kind of aware that I've talked to Jeremy Noonan as well, and he was a co-author as well. And I was just kind of waiting on this. So I've been waiting for a while, and then when I saw it, I was like, okay, it's kind of like Christmas here. But essentially, they took Edmentum. It's like an online credit recovery Algebra I course from a courseware provider called Edmentum, right? So there's like a couple of different online courseware providers that are very popular, and that one of them is Edmentum. The other one is Edgenuity. And so they're both essentially the same kind of thing. Like they offer courses to students that can be taken anywhere. You can take them in school, you take them at home, and you log in. And I've written about them a lot. So I'm sure listeners who have followed this podcast are aware. I've written about them quite a bit in the last year and a half. Essentially, they took an Algebra I course from Edmentum and they analyzed all of the questions. And they were looking at several things. They were looking at, okay, how much does this challenge students? Like what level of thought is required to answer the question? So they use what's called Bloom's taxonomy, and it's like an analysis question, which is basically asking what kinds of like higher level thinking skills are students required to use in order to answer the question. And they found that a large number of them did not require like any higher level thought. So they basically, like 5% of the questions required students to analyze content and 4% to create content. So most of them are multiple choice, and you just had to remember what was in the lesson. They also looked at how available were the answers online, and they found that a very, very large amount of the numbers were online. So 82% of the answers, or the 90% of the answers were found online. So if you just Google the question, you can find the answer online. And I've seen this done with math from Jeremy Noonan's video. You can see, like, if you just copy some of the math stuff, it'll still pop up. Google is very adept at like figuring out like what are you looking for. And 90% of the answers were online, but only 82% were found to be correct and did not require further filtering. So like there's a smaller number that were like the right answer that came up to the top. But as Caroline Heinrich said to me, that if your pass rate for a course is 70%, 75%, or 80%, like an 80 is on the high end, like that's like, a B or a C, you can pass the test without learning anything. Like if you know how to copy and paste and you have the ability to do so on this online credit recovery course, then you don't have to know anything. You don't have to do any of the material. You can just look it up on an application like Brainly. And so some of these that I've written about are pretty sophisticated. So, and then also the test questions were reused. So they found out that in some cases they were needlessly reused. Like they had extra test questions in a question bank, but they were not even being brought out to students. They were not even being shown to students. And that means, if you're going through a class and you fail a quiz and then you take it again, instead of giving you new questions that would test your ability and your skills, they're giving you ones that you've already seen before so that you know the right answer, right? So like that's sort of the concern there, is like you're just able to breeze through it easier the second time instead of getting that similar amount of challenge.
And how did Edmentum respond to these results?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I asked Edmentum, like, hey, what do you say? This is, I said, this is what I've written about, and this is what the researchers have said. And they basically said that we take issues around academic integrity seriously, especially in the age of AI. This is according to our spokesperson, and that our programs meet rigorous state and third-party agency approvals, ensuring the quality of curriculum and assessments. And then they also said, they cited a research study that showed that the students using their Algebra I course scored higher on a certain assessment than students who didn't. So that's the NWEA MAP assessment. And so they were pointing to that and saying, like, hey, this shows. And so that study, which was conducted by employees of Edmentum, like they're on the payroll for Edmentum, it did look at, like, here's ninth graders who enrolled in a online courseware Algebra I class, and then those who took Algebra I in an in-person setting, and it found that those who took the online courseware had a higher score at the end of it.
And there's some problems with that analysis. What were those?
Yeah, so Carolyn Heinrich, she was able to say, there are some technicalities that start to matter with some of those studies. And so basically, she just pointed out that the researchers for Edmentum kind of say that, you look at what is the background of those students in terms of what is their baseline MAP score, right? So then you have to sort of use like technical things called like a propensity score matching to try to like figure out how to, keep your sample versus your control, these different kind of variables in these sorts of studies to look right. And basically the researchers said the matching method used only available demographic characteristics and assessment scores, which may not have fully accounted for differences between students, such as the motivation of students who chose to take the courseware course compared to those who did not. So essentially, that makes a difference. And that also another big key thing there is that what the researchers at Vanderbilt and at Georgia State University were looking at, and for the research paper that Edmentum was responding to, is that was online credit recovery. And the course that Edmentum researched and said, hey, this shows our success, that was initial credit. So that's sort of a different thing, is that these are not students who've already failed a class. These are students who are taking it for the first time. That kind of changes who is taking the course.
And Jeremy Noonan, who was one of the first to kind of raise the alarm for this issue of the problems with these credit recovery classes, and like you mentioned, he co-authored this paper. He had some good kind of nuancing insight into this issue. What did he have to say about the difference it makes the way that Edmentum is used?
He said it makes all the difference. So he said, he had a student in Algebra II who had a solid math background, and that he was given all of the different kinds of learning supports that he needed. And he didn't have a way to cheat. He didn't have a way to game the system because Noonan didn't allow him to repeat his unit tests. So he learned a lot of algebra. But then Noonan went out and said, most students who are taking these courses and like the credit recovery courses, they lack the background knowledge and they're not given the support. So the truth, like they're given these courses because they've already failed a course, and they're not necessarily being provided that additional like support. And like, how do you get the work done? How do you figure out the concepts? And, he also said it's still possible for them to pass an Edmentum course while learning very little through a combination of guessing and cheating, depending on the situation they're in. So for these kids who don't know and they don't really have an opportunity to like figure out, and they're not being held accountable, there's ways to get through it without learning anything. So I think you can, on the one hand, learn a lot because you're being held accountable, because maybe your assessments are being proctored in person, like there's somebody looking over your shoulder and making sure that you're not cheating. But on the other side, there's sort of this open window, and if students can crawl through it, then they will. That's sort of the thing that I found when I'm reporting on different kinds of cheating schemes, right? Is like on different kinds of platforms, right? That if kids can try to get pay somebody else to do their homework for them, and they have the opportunity to do that, then they will. And you can see that on different social media platforms, and I've written about that quite a bit. So it really does make all the difference. And my original reporting on this pointed out there are some school districts that do not allow students to take any kind of assessments outside of school, right? And so when you have these best practices in place, I think it can really help. But, the way it is it's not always implemented that way. So for cost-saving reasons or otherwise, students are said, hey, take this course and graduate, and then, you're not our problem anymore.
Well, Brendan, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.
Securing your agency's data is paramount. IBM API Connect, integrated with no-name security, offers a tailored solution for federal agencies. Protecting sensitive data isn't just about safeguarding. It's about ensuring availability, recovery, and reliability to support mission-critical operations. As an IBM Platinum partner, 4Inc trusts IBM API Connect, integrated with no-name security, for unmatched speed and efficiency in securing, accessing, and ensuring the integrity of vital data. Visit FOURINC.com.